Good morning, member Bamboo Wren. Could I ask you to do a video and audio check, please? Hello. We can see you, but we are having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I think you may be muted. We're still having trouble hearing you.
a Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Advisory Committee. My pronouns are he and him. And I am pleased to welcome all of you to our fourth meeting of the term. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. This meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting in Committee Room Number 1 at City Hall, and also using the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. We ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. Members of the public are welcome to attend this meeting in person or can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. A few reminders. Members, please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak. If members wish to ask questions of staff or to speak, please make sure your video is on and raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. When voting on an item or motion, I would ask members to turn on your videos and raise your hand to indicate your vote. If there is a recorded vote, you will be asked to state if you are in favor or opposed. Members, I want to remind you that although we are participating remotely, we must still submit your motions in writing. The clerk's staff are available at 2slgbtq@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although some of us are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anshabec, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I will now call for declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you would like to declare an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none in the room or online, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the 2SLGBTQ+ Advisory Committee meeting on April 16, 2024? Cooper, going to move that item? Yes? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'd like to introduce a new item for the agenda. It is a letter from me on updating all City of Toronto relationship frameworks to include gender-inclusive language. I'll move a motion to add this item to the agenda as new business. I'm assuming everybody received a copy of that. All those in favor of adding the item, raise your hand. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The first item is QS 4.1, Toronto's expanded free public Wi-Fi strategy. Ryan Bayava, Manager Connected Community Technology Services, Anita Diol, Management Consultant, and Melissa Kim, Management Consultant, Technology Services, are here today to provide an update. Thank you.
Well, thank you and good morning. I'm Ryan Biava, the manager of the Connectio program, joined by...
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Kim, and I'm management consultant for the Connectio team.
So at the last committee meeting, the Connectio program was undergoing at the time a public consultation that focused on what the next phase of the city's Wi-Fi strategy would be. And that next phase will guide the investments that we make, whether that's in new siting, other programming, or educational aspects that might surround the Wi-Fi program. Since we weren't able to present at that meeting, we did share the slide deck and details on our public consultation at that time by email. We want to thank everybody who completed the survey. We did get at least 2 responses from people who identified themselves as with this advisory body. We also know that we received responses from people who identified themselves as working with organizations that primarily serve the 2SLGBTQ+ population. Of course, those questions are optional, so we may have received responses that were also in that general area, but that's what we know. So we do know that we did get responses there, and we're pleased about that. The public consultation closed on June 21st. We had a great response, over 1,700 on our online survey, in addition to the feedback that we got at our community-led discussions and public consultation meetings. We are currently in the midst of analyzing the data and coming up with finalizing actions and recommendations, and we'll share some of those results likely in January. That final report on this, on the strategy will be presented to the City Council in the second quarter of next year. We have a scheduled full report on the program due to Council at that time, so it will be included there. And any updates that we have will be shared on our website, which is toronto.ca/Wi-Fi strategy. I'll also just take this opportunity to say that for anybody who's interested in knowing where the sites are across the city as they come online, there's a map at toronto.ca/Wi-Fi. I try to mention that wherever I go, since the main aim, of course, is that people know about and use the sites. So with that, I'm sure we're happy to answer any questions that you might have, whether about the presentation or anything I've updated you about today.
Thank you. Any questions from members in the room or online? Seeing none, thank you for coming in. Cooper has a question. Go ahead.
Hi, morning. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, one second.
Could you kindly
Sorry, 1 second, Pink Angel. Cooper has a question, and then you're next. Go ahead, Cooper.
Hello. I actually have a comment, a couple questions, actually. My first question is, it's regarding the user experience. I'm just wondering, I was just looking back in terms of how you're engaging people when you actually roll out this process. The user experience, I'm just wondering, is there any considerations for a feedback mechanism that allow users to share their experience at the end of the service? I know when you log on to these public service Wi-Fi's, there's usually a prompt that says you have 30 an hour or 30 so minutes. So during that prompt, I'm just wondering, are you contemplating receiving feedback? I think this will be useful in terms of how people use the system and how you can better understand some of these intersectional barriers that underrepresented communities face when they're accessing this service. So I just wanted to share some feedback around that piece. I also highlighted that I also have a question around the bridge the digital divide, that piece around bridging the digital divide by placing free Wi-Fi in areas with greatest community impact. I think I just want some clarity in terms of what do you mean by communities with greatest community impact? What are those areas that you consider community with greatest impact, and what that actually means? I think this focus may exclude communities that are deemed impactful, which is problematic from my lens. And how can we ensure that we're reaching the right communities and providing equitable internet access for all? My last comment around that, again, around your equitable approach to digital advocacy. I think we need to do more than just offer free Wi-Fi. And what I mean by this, that communities that aren't able to afford basic devices, how can we support these individuals to ensure that they also have fair access to this necessary and essential resource? So those were my comments.
Okay, you want to respond? Go ahead. I can hear you. Is the red button on?
It is. Okay, there we go. So I think it's on now. Sorry. Thank you for those feedbacks. How we're engaging people, we engage them in a number of ways. So we had the survey online. We did have 4 specific outreach that our team ran. 2 of them were online, 2 were in person. And then we worked with SDFA on a number of, I believe it was 12 or 14 conversations that were led by community organizations. We worked closely with them to ensure that they had materials and could facilitate those with them. It's a really excellent process that's been in place for a while with SDFA, so we utilized that as well. So we're hopeful that we captured a number of responses that way and got the feedback that we need to ensure that we have a complete picture. I had made notes. You have a few other questions. If I don't answer them all, please remind me. On bridging the digital divide for greatest community impact, this is one of the things that we're really focused on. During the first phase of the program, we worked very closely with PF&R, Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, with to get Wi-Fi into their community centers. That was part of a program that we worked on with them. That really covered the broad range of the city. So the community centers are, of course, all across the city. We have also had some sites aside from that, here and there, where there was a good opportunity and we thought we could make a good investment. But the second part of this next phase of the strategy is trying to focus on how do we use the resources that we have to make investments with greatest impact. So we concluded a study that we sponsored with local researchers to look at which areas of the city, based on any number of criteria. We can get those to you. It's a bit much for today. I'm happy to share those with you. To where in the city it would be to have a highest impact, because of course our budget is limited, as is every budget, and we want to make sure that when we do make an investment, that it's where people can make good use of it. So that's what we're hoping to do, and that's our intention for the next phase. And I believe that your third question was about the equitable approach to digital advocacy, offering more than just free Wi-Fi. In my comments at the outset, I mentioned that it's certainly about where do you put Wi-Fi. That's kind of the first question. But the others are about what needs to be there around those services so that it can be used well. Whether that's looking at how the physical place site is set up, or what sorts of supports are in the building, or whether there are people who can be brought in to run events for people who are using the facility. These are all questions that we're interested in for the next phase.
That's it? Yes. Thank you. Pink Angel, you're up next.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair. I'm curious to know from the presenter, what was contained in the initial report brought to Council in Q4 of 2023, because I suspect, well, I certainly wasn't part of that presentation, and I suspect many of committee members were not, because we just joined this year. Could you inform us as to what was contained in the initial report in Q4 last year? Thank you.
Sure. So last year was a full program update where we gave an update on the entire program. Connectio works on public Wi-Fi, but a number of other questions as well. One is the research program that I mentioned to you, so sponsoring research over the years, looking into the digital divide in Toronto specifically. We have a lot of data about what the digital divide looks right across Canada, but when it comes to Toronto, there's just less data. So that's one thing that we've used our resources to do, is to find researchers who can do that on the ground to see how it looks from neighborhood to neighborhood, so that we can have that information. We have also been directed by Council over the last several years to look at the city's options with its fiber network and options for potential redevelopment of that. So that is research that we do as well. So it was a general program update about that, and one of the aspects of that we're talking about here today, which is we were directed to develop a next phase of the Wi-Fi strategy, including this consultation. So that's the reason that we're here today, as part of that council direction. So that's what was in that report, and we will have a follow-up, as I mentioned, in Q2 of next year that will follow up on the items that were in that previous report. We're kind of in the middle of that process now. I hope that's responsive to your question.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. What were the pillars and priorities and actions following that report?
The pillars regarding the Wi-Fi strategy in particular, we did have those in our presentation. I wonder if we could pull those up. Maybe Melissa, you can just mention the pillars of the Wi-Fi strategy. I'm not sure if that's the question that was asked. I want to make sure. It is? Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. We'll pull that up right now.
Hi. I will say the four pillars are present on our Wi-Fi strategy website, so toronto.ca/Wi-Fi strategy. But just quickly, the four pillars were universal public access, digital equity, user experience, as well as innovation and culture. And if you require any further information on that, because we did have a presentation, feel free to email us, and we'd be happy to send you the presentation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. We have no deputies on this item. Any speakers on the item? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for coming in today. Look forward to follow-ups.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion to receive the item. I'm going to ask Pink Angel, I'd like to move a motion to receive the item.
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is item QS 4.2, Toronto Fire Services, Inclusion and Community Outreach Update. We have Deputy Fire Chief here, Jim Jessup, to speak on the item. I know that you were here, your team was here last meeting, and so I'm not quite sure if you want to present or you just want to speak to it. So go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My goal was to, the Chief Peg had presented last time, and on April 16th, however, quorum was lost, and so the item wasn't completed. So my goal right now is to provide an overview of what was presented, and then happy to answer any questions, Chair, from the committee. So Toronto Fire Service gave a historical perspective and journey on how much work we have done, especially since 2016, and the goals and the gains we've made on workplace culture that have led us to where we are now. Our goal is to foster a culture within TFS that is increasingly safe, inclusive, welcoming, belonging, and supportive for members of the 2S LGBTQ2+ community, and we are working on doing that, and the Chief has been doing that from a top-down perspective literally since 2016. So as an example, these goals are embedded in all of the performance planners for his deputies, the commanders, and all the way down the line from all of the senior management team. The presentation also spoke to the internal training that has been completed and continues to be embedded, and the success rate that we have had in terms of completion of that, given our over 3,000 members. We also had members of our Positive Space Committee that attended during the presentation, and of course their goal is to provide advice to us as management on how to increasingly make TFS have a culture of increasing inclusion, belonging, and support, and also provide advice during Pride Month. Our recruitment team was also here, Chair. That team now is fully staffed as of right now, and they are out in the community doing incredible work, literally 7 days a week, providing opportunities and sharing all of the jobs that TFS has for the community, and pathways on how to achieve those jobs. And again, getting the message out across the entire community of how welcoming and supportive we are. The advice that we came here seeking on April 16th was how can we maximize this committee in our continued outreach efforts as well as engagement during Pride Month. So, Chair, that's a very, very high level overview. Certainly can speak to any questions of what was previously presented on April 16th, but those were the key messages that were presented by the Chief and the team was the internal training, the commitment since 2016 and our journey that TFS has provided since 2016. Now that we have our staffed outreach team, and the incredible work our Positive Space Committee has been doing, as well as in training and embedding that training and key priority from a top-down perspective, literally from the fire chief down to the deputies into all of our senior staff, Chair. So happy to answer any questions, but as I said, our goal was to come back today because the presentation was presented before, but unfortunately we lost quorum. So happy to speak, Chair, or to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the Deputy Fire Chief? Pink Angel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. To TFS presenter, could you kindly give us some more granular information as to the various hierarchies you have at TFS, and what is the percentage of rainbow community employed therein, right down to the most bottom level of fire persons and or support staff? for example, just percentages of, how much, how many employees are within the, are employed within TFS? And the second question is rather a suggestion. During June Pride Month, during the Pride weekend, is there like a booth on Church Street in the village to gain recruiters, to gain recruitment from the towards LGBTQ community? And is there any work being done that way? I know when I was at the Rikai Center during Pride Month, there was a TFS table, and I was engaging with the TFS employee there, and but they didn't have any information regarding that because they were just not privy to that information on the granular content of the rainbow community employed within TFS. So those two questions. Thank you, presenter.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I'll do my best to keep the answers in mind here. So the chair will know that Toronto Fire Service absolutely was fully engaged during the parade this year. We had a recruitment and outreach booth set up on Church Street with members of our recruitment and outreach team, as well as countless other members of Toronto Fire Service, both in a command and control perspective to make sure that the festivities were safe, but also in a forward-facing perspective where we had a number of vehicles, a number of senior staff, and a number of our members participating. So we were very proud and very engaged during all of Pride, but especially during the parade. And again, we worked with our allied emergency service partners, Toronto Police Service and Toronto Paramedic Services during the entire month, but especially during that weekend, to make sure that all participants were safe, and that was very successful. In terms of the numbers, I know we've spoken to this a number of times. So the only data Toronto Fire Service collects is our PSQ, so our pre-screening data questionnaire. That is at the beginning of recruitment. The city, through People and Equity, of which we are a client, has the Count Yourself In survey data, which we are not privy nor permitted to speak to. And that is because of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection Act and the requirements under there. But what I can speak to is the results that Toronto Fire Service has seen because of all of the work that has been done since 2016 to identify barriers, to remove barriers, to continue to inform the community of the opportunities that we have, but also the fact that we are welcoming and we are inclusive. So I would tell you, our last class that we have 104 recruits in that just graduated. 42% of the class identified, self-identified as a member of a designated group, and of that 42, 14% identified themselves as part of the 2S LGBTQ2+ community. So that's our most recent data in terms of our recruitment. Again, the granular data that you have asked for, we do not have that. In fact, that belongs to People in Equity, and that is something that is not shared with us because of the privacy laws.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. So it's wonderful that, the Toronto Fire Service do outreach and try to recruit people from the queer community. But there's also value in making sure that when they are here, they actually feel safe and welcome and inclusive, right? And for me as an outsider, I don't really see that. And I'll give you an example. Since I've been a counselor for the last 2 years, I've attended the First Responders Holiday Party every year. And the police chief shows up in uniform, the deputy chiefs show up in uniform, the superintendents show up in uniform. And they show up in uniform with intention to show that, they are here. They come early and they stay late. And I'm there. So I see it firsthand. The hundreds of people that are in the room are police officers, right? I don't see people from the fire service there, from paramedic services there. You know, it's just the police service. Also, during Pride Month, for example, I was invited to a roundtable panel invited by the police service. They had athletes who are queer, myself and others, and they invite the queer members of the police service to come in and listen and participate and ask questions. I know, for example, this year I was invited to go with the Toronto Police Service to Miami to their Pride. They go to New York Pride. So it's not just a one-stop, you know, Pride event and it's done. Like it's continuous, and I'm going to say they put their money where their mouth is. But I don't see that with the fire service and by extension the paramedic services, right? So can you comment on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair. So we take our advice, Chair, from our Positive Space Committee, and you know, it is continuing to evolve. I will state that certainly I have never been down to American cities to participate. Toronto Fire Service generally does not do that, not just for Pride, but when we gather information in terms of providing our operational plans and working with our allied emergency service partners to protect all the festivities, and we're doing that right now as an example, Chair, with FIFA. We're doing that with Taylor Swift. Quite often we do that from a remote perspective. One, from a cost-effective perspective, and two, just from a logistics perspective, given the number of senior staff that we have and obviously the scope of work we have. But I will say that, you know, the conversations and the work that continues literally up to the senior operations officer level is not just surrounded about 1 month. We meet with our Positive Space Committee all the time. They inform decisions literally from recruitment up into how to identify and remove barriers into the senior operations officer's ranks. So I want to assure you that this is a top priority. Those discussions happen all of the time. And the very fact that we are seeing the results that we are seeing shows the work that has been done since 2016. Again, I can't speak to individual you know, attendees or parties. I know that we were fully engaged with the Toronto Professional Firefighters Association for that party, having conversations with them as well. But in terms of the trips to some of the states that you have mentioned, no, that's not something that we have done in the past. And it's not something that I have, candidly, I'm not aware of any other Canadian fire service attending outside of the country to participate.
But can you give me an example of the Toronto Fire Service doing something here that brings their community together, your community together, to make them feel that they are seen and they're heard? I gave you 2 examples of, you know, the first responders holiday get together, the roundtables conversations that happen here in Scarborough this past year during Pride, hosted by the police service. So have the fire service done anything like that to bring their members together? And perhaps even with partnership with other emergency services. Because I mean, the Toronto Police seems to be on top of this. Maybe that, you know, maybe joining forces with them and perhaps making it something bigger and better.
No, thank you for the question, Chair. So the answer is yes, and it is done through the Positive Space Committee. They have meetings throughout the year that certainly inform the chief's decisions and inform the senior command decisions. We quite often attend, but really we take our advice from them, as they are the ones with lived experience, and they are the ones that are providing the command team the advice on how to move forward. So they meet quite often. They are the ones that provide us advice on how to continue to make sure the Toronto Fire Service continues to increase and evolve into an ever more increasing, inclusive and welcoming workforce right now. And as I said, they're very active. They participate in Fire Service Women Ontario, so they are at a provincial level. And again, they are the ones that, when they meet, bring us feedback in, and we absolutely have been implementing that feedback over the last 5 to 6 years.
Okay, thank you. Cooper, you have a question?
I wrote on my question, actually. just going back to your equity and inclusion training, just looking back at the numbers, which are very impressive, you've highlighted that for your trainings for the understanding gender and sexual orientation, you have a 93% participation. For the human rights, 95, understanding allyship, 93%. I think I'm just curious to understand why weren't you able to achieve 100% staff involvement? Could you please provide insights into any potential barriers or challenges that may have contributed to the remaining 5 or 7% not participating, and understanding these factors and how these can help us to perhaps inform future full engagement in these kind of trainings? I'm just curious to understand what were some of those drawbacks.
So thank you for the question through the chair. In fact, we are overly proud with the completion rate that we have had. But in answer to your question, the challenges we have is we have a lot of members off suffering on WSIB, occupational stress injury, post-traumatic stress, and recovering from job-related injuries. So the numbers that you see, the numbers that you don't see, or the differential between 100% and say the 97%, are those members that are actually off and out of the workplace. So we will never reach 100%. Because when this training is provided, we will have firefighters off recovering from occupational stress injury, recovering from injuries on the job, recovering from PTSD, and quite often recovering from cancer. And so those numbers reflect the very small minority of individuals across TFS that have not completed the training.
I guess my follow-up question is, will there be opportunities for these staff members who weren't able to participate? Will they have an opportunity to engage in these trainings?
So as we do with everybody that returns to work, there's a return to work plan. It includes operational training, recertification, and corporate training. So as members return to work, that training is assigned and that training is completed, and we monitor that throughout the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Maisha, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions as I'm thinking about your question of how to maximize community outreach efforts. I think what's coming up for me is questions around the measuring success of the formal training that you mentioned in the presentation on historical 2S LGBTQ challenges. I'm also thinking about how you gather feedback through the year from 2S LGBTQ community members about safety concerns. Are you collaborating with other organizations in the city? I also know through various work avenues, there's been an increase of 2S LGBTQ community members moving into Toronto. So how is information about safety and the Toronto Fire Service being made available to them? So how accessible is it? And do you feel that there's an opportunity through the year to open up room for co-creating those outreach opportunities, having community provide input? And what does that kind of look like, if you have thought about that as a team? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. A lot in there. So I'll do my best. In terms of safety, which is always the command team's and the fire chief's #1 priority, let me start there. Again, not only do we have the legal requirements under the Occupational Health and Safety Act to provide a safe work environment, it is something that we have striven for, and candidly, we take very, very seriously. We do not tolerate any type of behavior that contravenes any City of Toronto policy, bylaw, or anything under the Human Rights Code. And when those issues are brought forward to us, they are dealt with through city process and dealt with very swiftly and efficiently. In terms of the outreach, again, we rely and we continue to rely on our Positive Space Committee. And that is something I will certainly bring back to them, but they bring us ideas all of the time, and then we will discuss those ideas and incorporate them. So whether it's expanding our work during Pride Month, whether it's providing advice on recruitment and outreach, they are the ones with lived experience. They are the experts or the SMEs in Toronto Fire Service, and so we really want them to drive and provide information to the command team on how best to achieve these goals. So again, that is where we focus. We have regular meetings with them, and certainly I will bring that suggestion forward to them, but they are very active, they are very engaged, not only within Toronto fire service, but as I said, they're also part of Fire Service Women Ontario, which is a provincial organization that looks at all aspects of improving inclusiveness and diversity and belonging. But in terms of the safety aspect, as I said, that is something that is completed through training. That is something where if incidents are brought forward to Toronto Fire Service Management, we work with People in Equity, we work with the Human Rights Office, and they are addressed with immediately. And again, all of the information that drives our decisions, drives our recommendations, drives our strategies, comes through the Positive Space Committee.
Do you have a follow-up question?
No, I'm just wondering, what's the best way for us to stay in touch and support the Positive Space Committee as the year goes on? I'm just curious about like the details of some of the work they do and with some of the questions I had.
Well, thank you for the question. And through the chair, that's a great question. That's something I will bring back to the committee, following this meeting, and I will find the best way to which this committee can connect with the Positive Space Committee.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Pink Angel, Terrence, go ahead. Pink Angel, you spoke already, but I'll allow you to have a second round. But go ahead, Terrence.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks, folks, for that speech presentation. Got the slides, checked them out, they look good. The only thing I noticed within them, though, there was no speaking to what were some of the things that need to be addressed. So in part of this process, what did you identify were some of the needs and concerns of the community and what you're doing to address those? Questions in regards to that kind of involvement and engagement is, you mentioned the committee, the Positive Space Committee, and I was curious as to membership in regards to that. Both how do you choose, as well as is community also involved, or is it just members within your organization? And then the other question is in regards to the committee, kind of in line with the previous comments and question from Maisha, looking at the engagement of the committee with us. So appreciating that you folks are here to present, but I'm also like, well, why is there a silo? Why aren't we working directly with them? We could speak to them directly, answer questions, and work together in that sense. So whether it's, they can come with you folks and connect with us and, share the platform, and we can do that, as opposed to just relaying information, I think is a little bit more direct and helpful with that. So question in regards to the membership and community involvement, and then talking about asking, I guess, whether or not moving forward in the relationship, as you asked, what we can do, if we can incorporate that piece in the planning on how we can work together, is actually, let's bring those folks to the table and have that together, that conversation, as opposed to relaying it.
So through the chair, and thank you for the question, you were a little kind of choppy on the audio, so I hope I heard the questions. So in terms of the membership, they are members of the Toronto Fire Service. We obviously have a chair of the committee, and the committee, is chosen for those that want to volunteer for the committee. So they're members of the Toronto Fire Service, and they have been for a number of years. Obviously, there are different levels. The fire chief leads. And all of the deputies have taken the ambassador training. So that is how that is the makeup of the Positive Space Committee, and how they are chosen. In terms of the engagement, they were here last time. Unfortunately, as I said, we're stretched very thin sometimes, but certainly the Positive Space Committee did attend last meeting when quorum was lost. And it is something that I've committed to bring back following this committee, to see how we can link, for lack of a better word, the great work this committee is doing with the incredible work the Toronto Fire Service Positive Space Committee is doing.
Okay. Okay. Pink Angel? It's a quick follow-up.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chair. To the presenter, I'd like to push back a little bit on the Equity Committee in providing granular data. What I meant by granular data is not individual names of the persons, but merely percentages of the various hierarchies within TFS as to how many are from the rainbow community, This is in the interest of accountability and transparency. So if the Equity Committee can provide in the next presentation merely the percentages of who's employed where at TFS, if I may allow that. Thank you.
So again, through the chair, as I said, we are clients of People in Equity, and there are privacy laws that they are required to follow. As an example, we are not allowed to identify or any statistics, whether well, names we would not, but in terms of statistics, if there are less than 3 that self-identify, we are not permitted to discuss that or to share that statistic. And if there's members of less than 10 in a certain class, that is not allowed to be disclosed. So, you know, Toronto Fire Service has our PSQ screening that we do at the beginning of each recruit class that has absolutely shown an upward trend because of the work that we have started since 2016, and especially now that we have the recruitment and outreach team fully staffed and out in the community. I appreciate the question. I appreciate, in your words, the pushback. But as I said, we are clients of People in Equity, and it's just not something that we even have. And I think, Chair, one more point, if I may. And I think the key to understand too is these are voluntary surveys. Nobody is required to fill these surveys out across the city. So we rely on the information we're provided. But as I said, I think, you know, what we are really happy about is those that self-identify over the last number of years coming into TFS has increased exponentially. And that is a direct result of the incredible work that our teams have been doing, the Positive Space Committee, our Black Staff Network, feeding information, providing recommendations to us as management, but also now to our community and outreach team that is out 7 days a week, making sure that the community is aware of all the job opportunities, and as important, making sure that the community is aware that we are welcoming, we're inclusive, and we're safe.
Okay, any further questions, Big Angel? Okay, seeing none.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Again, I have to say, though, that what I'm seeing from the police service versus what I'm seeing from the fire service is very different, and they're both city agencies, right? So, I mean, for example, I know that there are certain officers within the Toronto Police Service who actually are in their vehicles with the decals, and it's all year long, and they go across the city, and they're engaging, you know, and they seem to have more stats than the fire service. So I'm not quite sure where the disconnect is. And if I'm having difficulty understanding that, I'm sure the members are as well. That's just you don't have to comment on that. I see Jad has a question. Go ahead.
Just a really quick comment. First, thank you for all the great work that you're doing, just to acknowledge that, because I think a lot of us are asking questions but not really acknowledging the great work. So thank you for that. And the second thing that I want to say is, when it comes to any type of LGBTQIA+ inclusion or sensitivity training, I just want to bring to light that many organizations do not include the intersectional aspect into these trainings, which includes issues that pertains to Indigenous sensitivity, anti-Black racism, a lot of other issues that are part of the fabric of the 2S LGBTQIA+ conversation. So just as a little input or advice, you know, make sure within the organization that your trainings also include these nuanced issues that pertain to racialized and cultural bodies from the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and thank you.
Thank you for the comment, and again, to ensure the you know, the committee, and sir, to you, you know, that is something that Toronto Fire Service, as all city divisions do, complete all the required training. So, for example, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism training, the Truth and National Reconciliation training. In fact, we have a number of events planned next week at the Fire Academy and across TFS for that. So I think those numbers are reflected certainly in the high 90s of total completion rate for well over 3,000 members, women and men of the Toronto Fire Service right now. But just, I want to give you our guarantee that all of the mandated corporate training for all of the training that you have just referenced is monitored very closely by the command team and is a top priority for us.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other questions being asked, any speakers on this item? I'll just say a few words. Thank you to the Toronto Fire Service. Thank you to Deputy Chief Jessup for coming in and presenting and answering our questions. I know, you're under the hot seat. But I just want to note that the fire service has changed a lot in the since 2016. I know you specifically have actually pushed this change, and you've been very inclusive, and really changing the culture of the service. So I recognize that, I appreciate it, and thank you. And there's still a lot more to do, and I'm sure, you will continue to push the boundaries on that. My one ask, though, is that hopefully in the next holiday party that, you'll be there in uniform with your colleagues and promote it across the fire service so that, people feel that there's a safe space for them to come and be their authentic self and meet others like them within the emergency services of the city. So thank you once again. I'm going to ask Mark to move that item for receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is item QS 4.3, Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Registration and Booking Transformation Project. Kathleen Harkel, Manager, Business Transformation and Change Management, and Suzanne Gathier, Project Manager, Business Transformation. Parks, Forestry, and Recreation will give a presentation on the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Registration and Booking Transformation Projects. Go ahead.
Good morning. We'll just get our presentation set up quickly, and thank you for having us today. To start, my name is Kathleen Harkwale. I am the Manager of Change Management and Business Transformation for the Registration and Booking Transformation Project within Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. And that project is a partnership between Parks, Forestry, and Recreation and Economic Development and Culture. It's a lot of titles. My pronouns are she, her, and I will pass it to my colleague Suzanne to introduce herself while I connect to the monitor.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Gauthier, and I'm a project manager on the Registration and Booking Transformation Project as well, and my pronouns are she, her.
Okay, so hopefully let's get this up on the screen in just a moment. Let me fix this. Here we are. So it's nice to be back. We were scheduled to speak with all of you back in April, and so we're back today to provide that update and to just seek clarification on some feedback that we received from the committee. So when we were here in January, we shared that the City of Toronto is replacing its recreation program registration and facility booking software. We got a contract for that replacement, which was awarded to Active Network LLC in June of last year for the ActiveNet system, which is a cloud-based recreation management system. We're currently working with them to configure and test the system, and we'll be launching it towards the end of the year this year. The ActiveNet system has a list of gender terms available to support the collection of socio-demographic information that clients can select from when creating or editing accounts. At this time, terms can be removed from the list. However, terms cannot be added or edited, so they appear as written, and the listed order is fixed. So when we were here in January, we did ask the committee a few questions, and the first was, should we be collecting gender-based data? And the recommendation was, yes, please collect it and please make it optional. And we sought feedback on the list of terms that are available from the system. So what we heard from committee, as I mentioned, gender data should be collected and it should be optional for clients to complete. We were asked to remove the options of other and gender non-conforming from the staff and customer interface and add additional options if and when possible. So we are working with the vendor in an attempt to make further edits to the configuration of the system so that we can incorporate the feedback of this committee, and we will keep you posted as we advance those discussions. If and when possible, we'd like to add questioning, prefer not to state, and then an open free cell text to self-describe. Both at committee and after committee, we heard from other members of the community. And so we heard a few recommendations that are not exactly the same. And so we did want to just seek clarification on that today. So we received some additional recommendations to provide definitions when possible. So we are looking into the possibility of either a hover text option or definitions on a city website that could help clients in terms of this understanding. We did receive a request from committee to change female and male to cis female and cis male. And we received a recommendation from the community to change female to woman, as is currently recommended by the city's Gender Equity Office, and male to man. And those align with those options in the city's recommended language. Now, we do know that the city is reviewing this language terminology now. As we know, our community is constantly evolving and the language to describe us changes as well. So we did want to just come back here today and provide that we have shared the recommendations with the vendor, that we have tested the staff and the user view of the gender options based on the feedback from committee, and I will show you what that looks like for both staff and residents. And that the city is updating its recommended language to gender data collection, and when this work is completed, we will return to this committee for further consultation related to the registration and booking system. And as I mentioned, if we are able to implement additional changes, we will also come back to the committee at that time. So I know that this is a grayscale. This is not very easy to see, but this is what the client interface will look like. I'm showing on the screen right now a drop-down menu of gender options and male and female, non-binary, genderqueer androgyny, intersex, transgender, transsexual, FTM female to male, and MTF male to female are showing on the screen. So these are the options as a client would see them when they were creating or editing their account, and this would be optional. So clients do not have to select this, but they could if they chose to. And then this is the staff user interface for your awareness. So what I'm showing on the screen right now is a view of the city or the staff access, where staff would see this information when creating an account or editing an account on behalf of a client. And so what's showing right now is that same drop-down list. The font is slightly different because it's slightly different on the staff side, but those same options would appear to staff. And if they were creating an account on behalf of a client, they would ask these questions and they would make the selection on behalf of clients. So really, I have one question back to you today, and that question is, have we captured your feedback correctly? And I would add, if you have any additional feedback, I'm very happy to take that as well. So that's all. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Kathleen and Susan. If you unplug your device, I could see the members online.
Absolutely, sorry.
Thank you. There we go. Any questions for the presenters? Pink Angel, and then Cooper. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So in the choices available on the form, in this day and age, transsexual is actually quite a derogatory term. And I recommend that it be removed. And instead of transgender, it can be trans person to be all inclusive. So those are my suggestions. And I know from experience, I am a trans person myself, that if I'm referred to as a transsexual, it is quite demeaning. And I'm sure that I am not the only one. There is many who would concur with this statement that I'm making, that transsexual is an archaic term and is not used anymore within the trans community. So that needs to be addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Pink Angel. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Pink Angel. No concerns in removing that from the option. That is one of the things that we did present to committee in January. At the time, we were not asked to remove it. I do know that is archaic. I do know as a member of the community, although I am cis myself, that some younger folks are using the term again. At least that certainly is what's coming across my social media feed. So I leave it to the committee to make the recommendation. We're very happy to remove it if folks feel that it shouldn't be there. At the January meeting, we weren't asked to remove it. So no qualms whatsoever. We take the recommendation from the committee with gratitude.
Okay, thank you. Cooper and then Jad.
Just a quick comment or suggestion rather. The screen where you're collecting, for example, first and last name, I'm just curious, is there any suggestion, contemplation around collecting an individual's preferred name instead of their first and last name, for especially people who are transitioning, who prefer to use the name that they prefer. I know people, with the birth-given names, it's not their name that they're comfortable with. So I'm just recommending if there's any way that you could insert a box that says preferred name so people feel more validated with how you're, I guess, referring to them. So that's just a quick suggestion from my end.
Yeah, thank you, Cooper. We've had conflicting recommendations over the use of the term preferred, just as it relates to self-identity. Is that hard-coded? The name is hard-coded, I think. So the term name in the system is hard-coded, so we could not change that. But from a policy and a practice perspective, clients can create and edit their own accounts online or through staff. And when you are creating an account for access to this system in order to register or book facilities, you do not need any proof of identity. The one exception to that is for the welcome policy, which is a means-tested subsidy program that is offered by Parks, Forestry, and Recreation to cover the cost of recreation programs. Because that is a means-tested program, evidence or proof of identification is required. And so I won't speak to that element of it, but from a day-to-day practice, clients can choose and edit their name. And interestingly, with this new system, you can also create an account that can be attached or removed from a family. So if we had youth who wanted to create a different account, in particular, if they were transitioning, we could support them in doing that, and that account could be independent. So we have considered options. I will say it is not perfect, but we are definitely looking to make it ideal where we can. Thanks, Cooper.
Thank you. Jad, go ahead.
Just a comment, previously working in these kind of situations with different nonprofit and government and federal bodies, I noticed that usually there's a lot of systemic resistance towards making these kind of changes swift. Just my input is that these changes do need to be made on an emergency basis. I think that it's unacceptable that we see these terms at this day and age. And I understand that the work is being done and we're so grateful. I understand things take time, but just to say that some things within organizational settings need to be fast-tracked. And I do believe that, for example, what Pink Angel mentioned, amongst other terms that refer to, other anatomical, biological terms, female, male, other than intersex, these terms are not used. So in general, just wanted to mention that and hope that this is moved as promptly as possible internally.
Thank you so much, Member Jad. I can confirm that we can make this change immediately. So the system is not public yet, and we can change this configuration to remove transsexual today, if that is the recommendation. That's not a problem at all. Couldn't agree with you more. I'm just gonna, given the conversation, Chair, if I may, I'm gonna pull up that list from the last meeting and just revisit it quickly if we can, in case there's anything else. Thank you so much.
Well, Kathleen's looking that up. Also, too, I think this system's going to go live in December, isn't it?
Yeah, we are confirming our official launch date, but I think it's
Is your mic on?
Is that better? My apologies. Through the chair, we are expected to launch later this year, so right at the end.
Yeah.
And we'll be confirming those public dates very soon, actually. Sorry, just give me one moment. While I'm pulling this up, can I confirm with the group that that is the recommendation? We do want to remove transsexual while I look at the other lists?
I mean, okay. Yes, put your hands up as a consensus. I'm not going to ask for a motion. Okay, I see majority agrees. Okay.
Okay, so we'll do that.
In through process, we should put a motion forth, but I won't do that today.
Okay, so I'll just plug this list back in. So just to revisit the conversation from January for the committee, male and female are hard-coded in the system, so those will display. And from the other choices that were recommended to be visible, non-binary, genderqueer, androgyny, intersex, transgender, transsexual, FTM, female to male, and MTF, male to female. Are there any other terms that folks would like us to remove from this current list? I can take it down again when you're ready.
Yeah, if anybody has any comments, they can just unmute themselves and speak, because I can't really see anybody right now. So I'll take silence as.
Sorry, everybody. Just to make sure that we're all coalesced in this conversation. So, at least for me, based on my years and years of knowledge, that any type of female and male, even though they're hardwired into the system, and when we speak about male and female, we're speaking about biological and reproductive adjectives and adverbs and descriptions of folks. This type of language is no longer used. We speak about gender now. We speak man, woman, in terms of, so for me at least, female and male definitely needs to be removed, no matter how hardwired they are. And F to M and as well, you know, these as well, for me at least, I agree with what Pink Angel said, which is trans individual, trans person would be inclusive enough. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Hi, folks. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, just piggybacking on what Jad said, I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. As hardwire as the terminology of male and female may be, they're incredibly harmful. So working to remove those and replacing them with the more updated language of man and woman would be great. And also completely taking out the male to female, female to male as the like language of trans or trans individuals, as Pink Angel stated, is inclusive of those. So just completely staying away from male, female.
Okay. I saw Maisha had her hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question for clarity. The male to female and female to male, was that inputted for like data collection? Because I think that's what I remember from last time, just to track, but I just want to double check that I'm not imagining it. And I also do want to note, like, I agree with everyone, but I do know a lot of seniors and young people who do still use the term transsexual as a reclaiming word. So I know in projects that I've been a part of, there's also been like asterisks added to talk about the historical challenges with the term, but I understand on an interface like this, that's not possible. So yeah, I just wanted to name that.
Thanks, Member Misha. I can confirm that the male and female, in terms of inclusion, because it is coded into the configuration of the system, if we display the gender options, those two will display. That's the current that's the current configuration. As it relates to data, you are correct. We did discuss data, and the conversation around that was, do we want to collect gender data at all? And if we do, should we make it optional or mandatory? So the relationship between the male and female is not exclusively related to the need for data. It is those are the two options, although we acknowledge that they are binary and outdated as discussed. Those are two options that appear in the most basic configuration. So as I mentioned, we are in conversation with the vendor with the hopes of getting these things changed as part of our continued contract with them. And so we will certainly come back as we have those conversations. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Talene? You're on mute. We still can't hear you. We can come back to you while you figure out your audio issue. Mark, go ahead. You have a question?
Instead of that term, the male to female, etc., would it not be better? And I am a senior, and so I may be outdated, but I would think transgender woman, transgender man would be better terms. Does that others agree? Rather than having that male to female?
I'll have staff respond, but I think the point was having transgender person, that way it's gender neutral. But go ahead, staff can respond to that.
That is a different discussion that we've heard from other folks, and so that was one of the recommendations in terms of being visible. And so we can definitely take that back. I think we have heard in the past that that would be preferred, and certainly in the city's recommended language, which is being reviewed right now.
Okay. You want to try again, Talene?
Yeah, is this any better at all?
Yes, we can hear you now. Excellent.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to circle back to that conversation around like the usage of the term transsexual and MTF and FTM. And I want to echo like a lot of folks' expressions that like these are, again, like outdated and archaic and very harmful terms for a lot of people. But I do also want to express that I know folks who are like of varying ages who do currently use these terms. And I think within the context of this form being self-filled, like by the individual, being like choose the term that aligns best with how you see yourself, I would want to advocate for having more options than fewer options, especially in the context that we are not currently able to provide a free cell, like fill in your own identity. While I understand like the harm that a lot of these terms have caused for folks who have had these terms put on them when they don't identify with them, I think that it is at the same time important for folks to be able to choose those terms for themselves. So that is what I would like to express.
Thank you for sharing that. Any thoughts from staff on this? No?
I think it's a very valid point. We have the recommendation from January around the opportunity to add an open text cell if we can. And as part of that conversation, I also take the note that more options are better than fewer until we can resolve that and have folks self-identify in that way. I think from a final perspective, I would just look to the committee, if I may, for a final recommendation. I think that I'm hearing we're removing transsexual, and do we want to change to transgender person if and when we can? I see some nods. I don't want to assume.
Raise your hand. Oh. Sorry.
To avoid using doing a show of hands to avoid the perception of having a strong vote.
For procedural reason, rather than doing a straw vote as the clerks suggested, I think it's better to have an official motion in place. So they're going to put some language together. We can hold the item down while our clerk's team here puts some language together, and then we can just vote on it officially. Otherwise, it's not really official if we don't have a vote on these items. So I'll hold this item down and we'll go to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is item QS 4.4, progress update response to 2021 X 26.14, reviewing City of Toronto policies governing the use of libraries and city facilities by individuals and groups promoting tolerance and discrimination. So we have Kevin Carr here from Manager Client Services, Parks, BFNR, Julie Frost, Manager Art Services, Economic Development and Culture, Francisco Fauti, Manager Facilities Management, Corporate Real Estate. There's a long list here. Sandra Tersini, Manager Transportation Permits, Enforcement Transportation Services, will give a presentation. You can identify yourselves.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
I'll just sort out our presentation here. Apologies, just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, good morning to members of the advisory committee. My name is Kevin Carr. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the manager of client services in Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, or PFR for short. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of PFR and alongside colleagues from Corporate Real Estate Management, Frank Foti, and Sandro Terracini from Transportation Services, and Julie Frost from Economic Development and Culture. The purpose of our presentation this morning is to report on progress made to support alignment and compliance with the city's standardized approach outlined in a report from the city manager and People and Equity with the same title as you see on the screen. Libraries are also referenced, and separate direction to report back was given to city agencies, corporations, and the library board through members' motion EX 26.14. We are here today to present on progress, and more than anything, we're here to receive your feedback. At the end of the presentation, we have a couple of questions to share with the committee. As we begin our presentation, I'll provide background on the direction given to city staff and an overview of the divisions here today. In response to events in 2019 by third-party groups permitted in city spaces, Council directed that policies and processes be reviewed and reinforced to help prevent events of this nature. Staff from 4 divisions have worked together to report back on progress made by each of our divisions to respond to direction given to city staff through members' motion EX 26.14. As outlined on the screen, staff were directed to ensure policy alignment and compliance across divisions through a standardized approach that aim to ensure that the City of Toronto's vision statement on access, equity, and diversity is upheld. The city aims to promote more inclusive spaces, and we are here to report back to this advisory committee on progress made on direction given to our divisions. As I stated, there are 4 divisions here this morning because each of our teams permit different spaces, aspects of city spaces. Through an interdivisional working group, we have been able to identify and recognize permit functions across city divisions to better understand and apply human rights, anti-harassment and discrimination, and hate activity policies in operational settings. When issuing permits, staff must consider the requirement for Toronto's civic spaces to be safe, accessible, and politically neutral. This presentation will specifically focus on work done to respond to the member's motion, and a manager from each division will walk through their division's progress. So we'll start with PFR. To increase public communication and awareness, Parks, Forestry, and Recreation has updated the web to display terms and conditions of use clearly and work to align its facility booking policies and processes. All PFR permit applications are reviewed and assessed on the content of the application, standing of the applicant, nature of the proposed event, and compatibility with the requested space. PFR ensures that permit holders review and sign a declaration of compliance with anti-harassment discrimination legislation. A divisional complaint tracking process has been developed and is posted publicly on PFR's website. Complaints can be sent to the email address parks@toronto.ca with the subject complaint handling. PFR also tracks suspensions and bans, and these include instances where removal of patrons occurred because of hate speech or discrimination. To support staff, PFR has worked to update its permit application procedures to detail how staff can escalate concerns. These instances can include situations where it may be reasonable to believe that use of a PFR facility by an individual or group is likely to promote or would have the effect of promoting discrimination, contempt, or hatred of any kind. We have also updated our suspension and ban policy, which will be made publicly available to ensure expectations regarding public behavior and consequences for inappropriate patron behavior. Now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Frank from CREP.
Good morning, I'm Frank Fodi, a Facility Manager within Corporate Real Estate Management. CREM has made progress by reviewing facility booking policies, procedures, terms, conditions, and complaints processes for City Hall, Metro Hall, and Civic Centers, and confirm compliance with the City of Toronto's relevant corporate policies. A Civic Center public space account is required to book space at City Hall, Metro Hall, and Civic Centers. Interested parties must complete and submit a detailed application form to apply for a Civic Center public space account. Organizations eligible to apply must be registered and verifiable as one of the following types: registered charity, not-for-profit, government, community organization, an agency, or corporation. Before granting the booking account, CREM staff will review and verify all submissions. Incomplete or incompatible applications will be denied. Applicants need to sign forms agreeing to adhere to City of Toronto equity, diversity, and inclusion policies during the initial and every subsequent booking. CREM facility event coordinators are assigned to and identified at City Hall, Metro Hall, and all the Civic Centers, and can be contacted about any complaints. Staff are trained on the divisional issue escalation process and will act accordingly. Records are maintained and tracked to monitor complaints and respond to actions. CREM's next steps include working to enhance staff training related to the City of Toronto's vision statement on access, equity, and diversity, beginning with the Toronto for All Foundation's curriculum, which is mandatory for all CREM staff. This curriculum supports the advancement of reconciliation, building and maintaining an equitable and inclusive workplace to serve our city's diverse communities better. CREM will coordinate with the Customer Experience Division to adopt this action, and an external consultant will be hired to perform the review. CREM's process reviews for the event spaces at St. Lawrence Market Complex and Union Station are underway to ensure alignment with the relevant corporate policies. I'll now pass it over to my colleague at EDC.
EDC. I am thrilled to be here and to report that EDC has reviewed our divisional facility booking policies and can confirm alignment with the city's human rights policies, including the hate activity policy. EDC ensures all permit holders and facility users review and sign a declaration of compliance with anti-harassment and discrimination legislation. And also our museums and cultural center websites will be updated to prominently display the city's vision statement of access, equity, and diversity, and the terms and conditions of facility use. EDC ensures that all permit holders and EDC staff use the Equity Lens tool to identify and address barriers to participation in divisional programming. We also reviewed our complaint tracking processes and report that feedback is tracked online and at site levels, with management reviewing all complaints. We also have codes of conduct signage posted at all facility entrances to support and staff and clients. EDC staff attend mandatory Toronto for All training, including 2S LGBTQIA+ and anti-oppression trainings. Slide 2, please. As for next steps, drawing from consultation with equity-deserving populations, including 2S LGBTQ+ individuals and communities, EDC will work to better support the public, including Indigenous, Black, persons of color, and equity-deserving populations, through the division's new Action Plan for Toronto's Culture Sector, which is a 10-year strategic plan that is expected to launch this fall. EDC also plans to draw from PFNR's recently updated suspension and ban policy to adopt our own policy to provide the public with clearer expectations around client behavior at our sites. And lastly, drawing from our review efforts, Arts and Culture Services and Museum and Heritage Services identified the need to develop a policy that will govern the community use of EDC managed spaces to reduce further barriers for equity-deserving communities at our sites. And thank you, and now over to my colleague, Sandro.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sandro Tersini, and my pronouns are he, him. I work in transportation services as a manager within the permits and enforcement section. For the purpose of this item, our focus is on temporary closures for street events. We have updated our public-facing street event webpage to feature the city's vision statement on access, equity, and diversity, the human rights and anti-harassment discrimination policy, and the hate activity policy. Similar to other divisions, transportation staff are mandated to complete the Toronto for All Foundations. This is a learning program which focuses on confronting anti-Black racism, equity, reconciliation, and inclusion, Indigenous learning, 2S LGBTQ+ inclusion, as well as accessibility and human rights. In terms of strategic equity work, Transportation Services is implementing a divisional equity plan which outlines resources and tools for staff to apply an equity lens in daily work practices. This framework also records our division's progress on corporate and divisional equity goals over time and brings the work across the organizations together under a guiding divisional mandate. Next slide, please. We plan to update our permit application procedures and guidelines to detail how our division may deny or revoke a permit based on the city's hate activity policy. Our divisional website now outlines a permit that can be denied if it does not comply with the human rights and anti-discrimination policy and hate activity policy. Transportation Services has a system for tracking complaints. We have reviewed this process and are exploring the possibility of incorporating a direct link to the complaints page on the city's Human Rights Office website. Lastly, we are working on integrating a prompt for event applicants to sign the declaration of compliance with anti-harassment discrimination legislation and the city's policy online. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to Kevin Carr.
Thank you, Sandro. Thank you, Sandro. This concludes our presentation, and through the chair, we would like to hear from the members of committee. To help get the conversation started, we have a couple of questions that are identified on the slide being shown. Just a note for committee members, I believe that the slide we're showing is 2 questions as opposed to what might have been included online, which I believe were 5. We've simply consolidated the questions for discussion, but we're happy to talk about these items or receive any other questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask that these, maybe the questions should stay on the screen so that, because I think this is the first time the members are seeing them, right?
Yes, so I believe the copy that was posted online had 5 questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can leave these ones here, certainly.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just keep those questions online. And I'll just ask the members, because I cannot see from this end, just unmute yourself and you can speak up. Is that okay? Okay. The clerk says we still have quorum, so that's good. So yeah, just unmute your mic and feel free to just chime in to answer any of those 2 questions.
Can't see them yet. Terrence here. But remembering the first one in regards to continued engagement, looking at sharing that information and capturing that through partnerships. So offhand, I'm thinking like organizations that utilize those spaces and services and all that, working with those to help looking at implementing processes to capture it, whether it's, participants that they share their information, say, with their service users and participants, or they post it somewhere or whatever, but very much working with, say, community organizations and sharing that to engage folks that they're already engaging, especially if those organizations access city services and spaces. That's one idea. But yeah, I want to see those questions. Yeah.
Okay. You want to comment on Terrence's?
Thank you, Terrence. Appreciate your commentary. I think certainly the feedback of organizations and groups using our spaces is certainly important. And probably, one of the first sources for making sure that our spaces are accessible and equitable and serving community needs. So I do know, certainly there are a number of avenues for receiving feedback from community, from individuals that are using our spaces, whether that is through our complaints tracking email, which I mentioned in my presentation. That information is also available online. we operate a contact center, that is available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm speaking for PFR, of course. But that contact center, individuals can share information through that venue as well. And some of my other colleagues with other divisions also have similar complaint, tracking processes or feedback processes. So I don't want to speak for my other colleagues in other divisions, and I'll give them an opportunity if they want to comment. But certainly for Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, we welcome all feedback from our patrons and participants using our facilities.
Thank you, Kevin. I think I will echo that statement. In transportation services, we have a complaint section but we also welcome feedback through our divisional website. And I don't have the direct link with me, but we will find it. We can find it, and we welcome those complaints or questions or advice.
Okay, go ahead.
Through the chair.
One moment, go ahead. The clerk has a comment.
Sorry, yeah, just for quorum, can all members participating online please turn their cameras on? Okay, we do have 8, I can confirm that there are 8 members, so we do have quorum.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through EDC, we also, on top of the complaint logs that we have online and as well on each site, we also organize local stakeholder, rights holder group meetings regularly that invite many members of localized communities to be in a meeting with many city staff, including PFNR, EDC, CREM. So these are 4 times a year, and we receive a lot of feedback from community from these meetings as well.
For CREM, we follow the same similar process. We monitor and track complaints, and we do meet with stakeholders.
Your mic is not on.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So similar to EDC, we do track and monitor complaints, and we do meet with stakeholders regularly and follow up with responses accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the committee members? Pink Angel, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. To the presenters, when you receive complaints from intolerant groups or individuals and/or complaints, could you enlighten the committee as to what is the extent of this intolerance and discrimination, and how is that handled vis-a-vis EDC, CREM, PFR, TPL, and so on? If you could comment as to what actions are being taken when you receive complaints from the various departments that we have talked about, and to let the committee know in particular what is the extent and what's being done. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'll again start the response to the question. So what I would say is one of the first things to occur is an investigation into the circumstances, gathering of information to understand the complaint. So while there is a degree of response or action that might be tailored to the specific circumstance, the city does have procedure, a hate activity procedure listed on the website, which accompanies the human rights and anti-discrimination hate activity policy. And all city divisions are subject to following those procedures. And essentially, that's where it starts, is where there's an allegation of hate or discrimination. It starts with alerting for staff, if it's received by a staff person, alerting a supervisor or manager, and then the supervisor, manager, et cetera, is responsible for taking carriage of that complaint or that situation, investigating further, and then determining appropriate actions in response. So that's a little bit about you know, how those circumstances are treated.
Could you give us an example, perhaps?
Through the chair, I'd be happy to provide an example. We had a religious group who wanted to rent a facility at one of the EDC sites, and this group was unknown to us. And so as part of the process, before even a permit is even processed, staff underwent research on this group and discovered buried in their website transphobic and homophobic statements. And so this was brought to the manager's attention, as well as the divisional head. And we also contacted the Human Rights Office, who worked alongside us. And we determined that this group was not able to rent our facility based on the information that was received, with the support of the division head.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from anyone? Seeing none? Okay, thank you. Any speakers on the item? Seeing none. Pink Angel, you want to move this item to receipt?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5. QS 4.5, 2025 schedule of meetings. The meeting schedule have been scheduled. I think everybody has a copy of this. Any questions, concerns about the dates that have been proposed? Seeing none. Speakers on the item? Seeing none. I'll move this item. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're still wordsmithing the motion for item 3, because I've asked that a minor change be made. It's good? Okay. Okay, yeah, head on back. So we'll go back to item number 3 again. So we do have a motion. We could post it online. Sorry, on the screen. If you want, you can speak to the, oh, you mean to speak to it, I don't know. So yeah, here it is. So it reads that the Two-Spirit, our committee, requests Park PFNR staff to consider removing the options of transsexual and add trans person to the registration and booking software gender options. Item 2 is asking a PFR to consider removing the option of FTM, female to male, from the registration and booking software gender options. And also item number 3, requesting PFNR to consider removing options MTF from the registration and booking software gender option. And item 4 is requesting PFR to consider reporting back on additional changes to the gender options in the registration and booking software system. Does that capture what we talked about? I'm seeing heads nodding. Okay, any questions on the motion? Any speakers on the item? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We good? Okay, wonderful. That passed.
Thank you.
And we do have one new item, and this was the new item that I spoke about earlier. It's a motion seeking to recommend the exec committee to direct the city manager to update all City of Toronto relationship frameworks to contain gender-neutral language. This includes not only the replacement of gender-specific language, but also a thorough review of all underlying assumptions that may inadvertently reinforce binary assumptions about gender. So that's the gist of the motion. Any questions about this motion? Seeing none. Any speakers on this item? Seeing none. Wonderful. All those in favor of this motion? Opposed? That's carried. And that concludes our agenda for the day. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's so nice to see everybody here in person and online. I think we did some really great work today. I think I'm feeling very good about it. I hope you are as well. And I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.